Here now exclusively, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, a combat veteran and 2020 Democratic presidential candidate. Representative Gabbard, great to have you with us tonight. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks. Great to talk to you.
What's your reaction to that? You heard Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president there, and John Bolton have also said that, this is not a coup. This is the will of the Venezuelan people, that Guaido be in charge.
Well, I think what was mentioned there in that clip, and I think you highlighted, that the United States is putting all options on the table, including U.S. military options. That points to a much bigger risk and a much bigger danger that poses the American people and our own national security. Anytime we're in this situation where you have tensions being ratcheted up and this conflict being pushed closer and closer between nuclear armed countries like the United States and countries like Russia and China, this is something that poses an existential threat to the American people. And when you hear this kind of saber rattling coming from the Trump administration, from people like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, pushing this civil war and for the United States to get involved, we're dealing with dangerous consequences. We know this all too well in Hawaii just over a year ago when we got this nuclear missile alert that went across over 1 million people's phones in our state saying, missile incoming, seek shelter immediately. This is not a drill. What we found in that terrifying incident, even though it was a false alarm, the threat was real and there was nowhere to go.
But you do have
shelter to be
obviously
found.
You have a desperate situation that's playing out in Venezuela. People have lost an average of 24 pounds. Hunger. There is electricity issues, to be clear, and millions of people have fled. And we have tried sanctions against the oil business, against Cuba, which has a huge influence there, and none of that seems to be working to give the people of Venezuela what they democratically voted for. And the concern is that having this in our backyard, where you could have a foreign adversary have so much control, as we see from Russia in that country now, that's a threat to our security as well.
Well, you brought up a few points there. First of all, Russia and China have had long-standing relationships with Venezuela, where they've had, the sale of the S-300 missiles happened over a decade ago between Russia and Venezuela. That relationship with China has been long-standing. These are not things that are new. What we are hearing is an increased saber-rattling and tension saying, the United States needs to send in the U.S. military now to wage yet another wasteful, counterproductive regime change war. And once again, it's being done under the guise of humanitarianism. If this administration is so concerned about the well-being of the Venezuelan people, as we all are, then they should be using their influence and power to try to bring the different sides together towards some reconciliation.
Well, wouldn't they say that that's exactly what they've been trying to do? We heard from Secretary Pompeo and from the president that they are hoping for a peaceful resolution here. But you have Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, saying that our interference is a grave violation of international law. So do you agree with him?
The problem is that you hear people like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo saying that they're hoping for a diplomatic solution, while at the same time basically using the threat of U.S. military force. That does not set the stage for diplomacy. That simply ratchets up the tensions. The United States should set the example and lead the way, bring other parties to the table to try to say, hey, let's have internationally brokered and overseen elections so that the Venezuelan people can truly have their voice heard.
Do you believe that Nicolas Maduro has been a horrific leader for his people and that he should go?
I think that the Venezuelan people ultimately need to be the ones to make that decision.
But they have made that decision.
The United States is not helping the situation by interfering and basically pushing for externally yet another regime change war that history shows us has not turned out to have a positive impact on the people in the countries where we wage these wars. That's
so you would
why
just,
I'm pushing
there's 50 countries that have backed Guaido and say that he's the rightful democratic leader of that country. I mean, if you're a person who loves Venezuela and lives there and is looking to the United States saying, please help us, are you saying that you would turn your back on them if they need, even if they do need some military support? You would say, sorry, we're not doing it?
I'm saying that when we look throughout history, every time the United States goes into another country and topples a dictator or topples a government, the outcome has been disastrous for the people in these countries. That's why we should use our leadership in the world to try to broker a diplomatic solution, working with countries like Russia that have great influence over Venezuela so that there is a peaceful outcome. Because I can tell you as a soldier, Martha, I've seen firsthand the high cost of war, and pushing for this civil war, pushing for the use of military force will only end up with more suffering and death and disaster for the Venezuelan people. What to speak of increasing the nuclear threat, increasing these tensions that risk and threaten our own national security.
All right, Congresswoman Gabbard, I hope you'll come back. Good to have you with us tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Martha.
You bet.